Al-Andalus needed uniting, and the question was, who was the person who was going to unite them? So the Umayyads were having internal problems inside Al-Andalus. However, things were going to go from bad to worse for them, as in the year 750 a revolution was in full swing back in the Middle East. The Abbasids were attempting to overthrow the Umayyads, and at the Battle of the Zab River they managed not only to defeat the Umayyads but kill many of their high-ranking members in their family, thereby seizing control of the Umayyad Caliphate right from underneath their noses. After the Abbasid revolution was complete, the Abbasids decided to invite the remaining Umayyad clan members to a dinner to say sorry, to put the past behind them, to let bygones be bygones. And they all came along, and during this dinner each Umayyad family had a waiter standing behind him, and when the order was given, a knife was stabbed into the back of each and every single one of them, killing them instantaneously on the spot. And therefore the Abbasids had eliminated the Umayyad threat from their leadership of the Caliphate of the Muslim world. However, there was one Umayyad who, luckily for him, did not feel hungry that night, and he was called Abdur-Rahman Ad-Daakhil, and he was the grandson of the last great Umayyad Khalifa, who was called Hisham ibn Abdul Malik. And he, previously to this, he was a prince living a life of privileges in Damascus. However, after the Abbasid revolution, he was now the wrong person in the wrong place at the wrong time, and the Abbasids decided to go after him. And at one stage he had to even jump in the Euphrates River and swim down the river to escape Abbasid assassins. He needed a great escape, he needed to get away, so he decided to go far away from the Abbasids, and he head to the Islamic West, to North Africa. The mother of Abdur-Rahman Ad-Daakhil was a Berber, i.e. someone who originates from across the way in North Africa. And in fleeing the Abbasid revolution in the east and coming here, he would therefore have some of his family members who could protect him. Secondly, Abdur-Rahman Ad-Daakhil was very well versed with Christian way of life, because he was from Damascus, where they had a good Christian population. And of course the Iberian Peninsula was ruled by Christians prior to the Islamic conquest, so therefore he would understand a large segment of the population here. Thirdly, the Abbasid revolution started in the Islamic East, in places like Central Asia and Persia, and they were relatively unknown over here. So if he was to come here, he would be free to operate and do what he wanted without the Abbasids being able to get other people to assassinate him or to turn him back over to them. And last but not least, this land had some turmoil and some internal problems between the Arabs and the Berbers, and Abdur-Rahman Ad-Daakhil was a mixture of the two, and therefore he was the man who could potentially unite them all together again. So if Al-Andalus was a lock, Abdur-Rahman Ad-Daakhil was the key. So Abdur-Rahman Ad-Daakhil had landed in North Africa, and he was thinking about crossing the strait and entering Gibraltar and Al-Andalus, but he was wondering what kind of reception he would get by the people here being in Umayyad and being on the run. So he sent out some scouts into Al-Andalus to see how it would be received. And at the time there was a problem between, as I said before, the Arabs and the Berbers. There was also an inter-Arab problem going on as well. So the Arabs could be divided into two different tribal confederations, the Qaisi and the Yamani. And each confederation was a whole collection of tribes. So there was Qaisi tribes and there was Yamani tribes, and these people had big problems with each other at this point in time. The current ruler of Al-Andalus, the governor, was very wary of Abdur-Rahman Ad-Daakhil from crossing into Al-Andalus, because he knew that he was a potential rival to his throne over here. So he remarked, if Abdur-Rahman Ad-Daakhil was to arrive here and was to urinate, all the Arab tribes would drown in his urine, because he's from such an important tribe. So Abdur-Rahman Ad-Daakhil got some news back that some of these tribes in these two tribal confederations were very willing to host him. So he then decided to cross. But would he come to Gibraltar, which is the shortest crossing point between the two land masses? Arriving in Al-Andalus via Gibraltar would probably not have been a good idea, because that's the place the authorities were most likely to be on the lookout for him. Therefore, he sailed east and entered Al-Andalus via another place called Al-Munakkah. And if you come to Al-Munakkah today, you'll see a statue in memory of his arrival. But when he arrived, he got a shock, because he found that there were many Arab tribes who were here waiting for him, waiting to pledge allegiance to him and support him in his cause. And that's when he realized that there's a possibility here he can do something in Al-Andalus. But what he needed to do now was take some major cities. So he marched west and took Malaga and then took Seville with these men. But if he could take another city called Córdoba, then he'd completed the mission. Abdur-Rahman arrived here in Córdoba, and governing the city was a man called Yusuf al-Fihri on behalf of the Abbasids. But Abdur-Rahman managed to take the city with only 700 men, and in doing so, a city further to the north called Toledo also submitted to his rule. He was able to proclaim himself the new Emir of Al-Andalus. From being someone who was a fugitive on the run to a refugee looking for a new homeland, Abdur-Rahman was now the right person in the right place at the right time to unite this fractured society. Abdur-Rahman Ad-Daakhil would focus on building his new society, but his main construction project was this place of worship right here. Prior to the Romans being here, it was a pagan temple, then it became a church, and after the Islamic conquest by Tariq ibn Ziyad in 711, the building was shared between the Catholics and the Muslims. On Sundays, the Catholics would use it for Mass, and on Fridays, the Muslims would use it for Jummah congregational prayer. And when it was a pagan temple, it was dedicated to the god Janus, who was the god of new beginnings and transitions. And this was a new beginning for Abdur-Rahman Ad-Daakhil, as he was in Al-Andalus, far away from his beloved Syria. And also it was a transition, because Abdur-Rahman Ad-Daakhil had moved Al-Andalus from being a province within a caliphate to its own independent emirate. Allah says in the Quran, فَمَنْ شَاءَ فَلْيُؤْمِنْ وَمَنْ شَاءَ فَلْيَكْفُرْ. Whoever wants to believe, let him believe, and whoever wants to disbelieve, let him disbelieve. And this was the basis upon which Abdur-Rahman Ad-Daakhil built his new society here in Al-Andalus, one where every religion could do as their religion says. So no one was forced to become a Christian, a Jew or a Muslim, and they all lived side by side, what the Spanish call convivencia, or mutual coexistence, living together. Abdur-Rahman Ad-Daakhil society would be organized very different to the way the Visigoths organized their society when they ruled this land. So we can categorize the types of people into 5, and I'd like you to remember these 5 because we're going to be talking about them an awful lot over the coming episodes. So the first category is Arab Muslim, which is self-explanatory, people who were Muslim and people who are Arab. And the second category is Berber Muslim, again self-explanatory, people who are Muslim and people who are Berber. The third category is Muwallad Muslim, and the Muwallad were people who were either fully Iberian and Muslim, so they either converted to Islam or their parents converted to Islam, or they were half Iberian and half Berber or Arab. The fourth category is what's known as the Mos-Arab Christians, and Mos-Arab is a word which comes from Arabic originally, from the word Musta'arab, which means to consider oneself Arabic. And you might ask, how can the Christians be called people who consider themselves Arabic? And the reason for that is they started adopting a lot of Arab and Berber and Muslim customs and traditions while they remained Christian. And the fifth category is Jewish people, again self-explanatory. So the 5: Arab Muslim, Berber Muslim, Muwallad Muslim, Mos-Arab Christian, and Jewish people. Try and remember them. The Abbasids did try and recover Al-Andalus from Abdur-Rahman Ad-Daakhil. They sent a small force to him, but he was able to defeat them, and he even sent the heads of the dead soldiers back to the Khalifa in Baghdad. And when the Khalifa saw the heads of his dead soldiers, he famously said, "Blessed be God who put a sea between me and Abdur-Rahman, Saqr Quraysh, the falcon of the Quraysh." In the year 780 AD, he managed to incorporate the northern Muslim town of Zaragoza into his dominion. He now ruled all areas of Islamic Al-Andalus. The only difference between him and the previous governors of this region was that he ruled by consent rather than military power. And his city started to flourish and became a rival city to that of Baghdad of the Abbasids, which is in modern-day Iraq. He was laying the foundations of a society that would be unparalleled in Europe for centuries to come. To put the life of Abdur-Rahman Ad-Daakhil into perspective, I'd like to think of a 19-year-old boy that you know. Think of that boy escaping an assassination attempt and then fleeing 5,000 miles away to another country, and within 1 year of arriving in that country becoming the ruler of that country, and then setting up a dynasty that was going to rule that country for many years to come. Do you know anyone like that? I doubt there's been any other person like that in history since Abdur-Rahman Ad-Daakhil. But if you do know anyone like that, pop it in the comment section below and let me know what you think about the life of Abdur-Rahman Ad-Daakhil. After ruling Al-Andalus for over 30 years, Abdur-Rahman Ad-Daakhil passed away, and he was succeeded by 3 sons. But which one of these 3 would become the new emir, and how would this new independent Islamic Emirate in Western Europe fare? Make sure you watch my next episode on the series of Al-Andalus to find out.